Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is my top 10 worst movies of 2018. Here we are at the end of the year, meaning time to celebrate and reflect on all of the great things that 2018 had to offer. But much like the world itself, the world of film also offered a whole lot of garbage this year. And since apparently I'm some sort of weird masochist, I watched like all of the garbage this year. Thus, my list was overflowing with just really not good films that I had the displeasure of viewing. But I have narrowed it down to the 10 worst of the worst, with a whole lot of dishonorable mentions to come. Now, before we jump into the actual ranking itself, this is just my personal ranking. These are the films that I just did not like at all. But if you did happen to enjoy any of the films on the list, more power to you. I'm glad somebody found something to enjoy within them. But in saying that, this list is completely arbitrary. These are just the films that I didn't enjoy at all, and the ranking in which I enjoyed them least. Nothing else. So, now that we've gotten all that fun jazz out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the countdown with number 10. I had to include Hunter Killer in on this list because why? Just why? At this point, I'm ready to ban Gerard Butler from being in any more big screen action films because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of getting this every year from him. But honestly, at least something like Geostorm from last year was over the top and ridiculous and had some fun camp to it. Hunter Killer was so dull and boring. Gary Oldman running around giving a horrible performance. Gerard Butler, well, being Gerard Butler. This horrible, ridiculous plot that beckons back to Cold War Russia. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Come in. Don't sign on for anything else like this again, please. Hunter Killer was supposed to be this, like, action flick that really didn't have any action and really is only loosely a film, I'd say. Yeah, it's the 10th worst film of the year for me. This film ended up making the ranking because it thought it was good. Life itself really thought it had something to say, and what it had to say was nothing worth saying. So, what was the point of all this? This is a film in which all of our female characters quite literally have to die for the male characters in this story to learn anything. It's another one where we're just like throwing all of these characters and all of these storylines into this romantic drama, and we don't really care about any of them. It's boring. It is crazy to watch. Like, the way it is put together is just ridiculous. The script is horrible. The actors do what they can, but the material is just so bad that there's nothing they can actually do. Life itself never has a clear vision of what it even wants to say. Thus, it comes out wasting your time by saying nothing, even though it kind of just introduced you to about a million different storylines. You end up just walking out like, really? Action Point actually had me dumbfounded, to be honest. And for a film this stupid to dumbfound me, I guess that's an accomplishment in and of itself. But who was this film for? Who was the target for Action Point? It has a script, it has a story, it has acting. Kind of along the lines of Bad Grandpa, but we don't have any pranks like Bad Grandpa. That film used the narrative and the story just kind of as like a shell to get us from one point to the next and gave us life for these pranks on actual people to be brought out. Action Point was literally just an excuse for Johnny Knoxville and his friends to set up this like janky little amusement park and ride around on it and then pretend to act. The story itself was just ridiculous. Nobody cared about these characters. Really, what was the point of the story itself? So it was trying to sell itself as like a Jackass film, but when Jackass fans got into the theater, they weren't actually presented with a Jackass film at all. They were presented with this dad, daughter, granddaughter film that had pre-planned ridiculous stunts set in it. I don't know. Action Point was pointless. A late entry onto this list, Holmes and Watson was a true lump of coal to be found under the Christmas tree this year. Whew. Just from the trailers, I knew I wasn't really going to love this film. However, I didn't quite expect it to be as bad as it was. One, it's not funny. Two, it's horribly outdated. And honestly, it just kind of plays these like 3 or 4 really like gross out juvenile jokes over and over and over again. Who wanted to see Sherlock Holmes played as a complete idiot by Will Ferrell, and his sidekick Watson played as a complete idiot by John C. Reilly, with characters who think they're a cat, the queen. I mean, oh my gosh, the whole thing is just so stupid. I sat there losing brain cells by the minute watching a Sherlock Holmes film. Honestly, at this point, it's time to just retire Sherlock Holmes. Between this and Sherlock Gnomes, which just missed out on making this ranking, it's done. It's done. We haven't really gotten a great adaptation in some time, and we don't need to bring this character back anymore. I mean, at this point, it's just slander. We're running a legacy through the mud more and more, and honestly, I think this is a new all-time low. This movie was terrible. It was like painful for me to sit through this entire thing in a movie theater. The 1517 to Paris. Thank goodness for the mule. Otherwise, Clint Eastwood, I was ready to call it a career on you after I watched the 1517 to Paris early this year. The reason this film makes it all the way up to number 6 on my ranking is because it legitimately thought it was a really good film. And it is made from an award-winning director in Clint Eastwood, someone who has made great films throughout his career. But to come up with something so inept and horribly, shoddily made is really inexcusable. The 1517 to Paris tells a real-life story and featured the real-life heroes as themselves in the movie, only to be skewered. And I think that is the ultimate disrespect and really reason this should be on lists across the board. Because Clint Eastwood literally put these poor kids out here to be judged as actors and gave them a completely garbage film to be in. The editing is terrible. Every aspect of cinematography here is just non-existent, honestly. It looks like it was made for $5. The script was absolute garbage. I mean, everything from a filmmaking standpoint is garbage in this film. It is just so poorly executed. If I had turned this on the TV, I would have assumed it was a made-for-TV film. That's how poorly this was executed. It's terrible, and from an acclaimed director that should know better. So we have finally hit a horror film on this list, which you knew we would, because as much as I love this genre, horror will consistently give you some of the worst films every single year. And this year was no exception. There were so many that I could have included actually on this list. Many of them will be coming up in our honorable mentions. But for now, the first to actually make the list is Truth or Dare. Truth is, this is terrible, and I don't think I'd rewatch this, even if you dared me. What a hot mess. The only redeeming factor that doesn't move Truth or Dare up any further is it definitely has the makings of being just so ludicrous and terrible that you laugh. I mean, there is entertainment to be had in making fun of this film, honestly, because it's that bad. Those stupid faces, the complete and total ridiculous concept, horrible acting performances, this god awful script. Thankfully, it just goes that extra mile of being terrible, although it doesn't really realize that it's gone that extra mile. These cheating sublines, oh my gosh, all of these different plot points, but take them all very seriously. Thankfully, it's executed so poorly that we don't have to take them seriously. Being so terrible that I can laugh at you isn't actually a positive, you know that. That gets you at number 5 on the worst of the year list. Why did I watch this film? How did I do it to myself? I don't know. I saw it in theaters, no less, at a screening. Show Dogs is just as terrible as you imagine it will be. Will Arnett, fire your agent immediately, please, because if this is the kind of project you're going to be doing when you're not voicing Lego Batman, we don't need to see you in films, period, then. Honestly, Show Dogs is an insult to children, that this is considered like family entertainment. Why are we bringing these animated like talking dog movies back to the big screen, first of all, especially when they're done this poorly? The concept is just insane, of this stolen panda in this dog show. Like, what in the world? The only thing that really keeps it from moving into the top 3, or maybe being the worst thing I saw this year, is possibly like a couple of cute dog-ish moments, but the jokes are terrible, full of fart and poop and grabbing a dog's balls joke that is played throughout the film. I mean, oh god, the more I think about it, the worse this film gets. There is nothing to laugh at in this film. It is just painful to sit through. Now we reach the worst horror film of the year. Not the most horrifying film of the year, because we still have 2 more to go, but the worst horror film itself was definitely Slender Man. And this film most certainly took itself 100% seriously. It thought it was scary. But right off the bat, from the concept of basically a meme on the internet being brought to life, given this really horrible backstory, like mythology, legend, was a mess to begin with. And then when you get that terrible execution, it's then laughable. There's not a scare to be had in this film. The atmosphere is just horrible. The acting is laughable. The script is literally toilet paper. And then those like shaky scenes where they're like freaking out during a makeout sesh. You don't really even need to make fun of Slender Man, because it is the butt of its own joke. I mean, it's just terrible. I literally watched this film just to make sure that I had an accurate representation of what I thought the worst movies of the year are. I'm glad I did in that sense, because Gotti is absolute garbage. And any worst of 2018 list that does not include Gotti is, quite frankly, incomplete, because this movie is terrible. Just as bad as you've heard it is. John Travolta has given many bad performances throughout his career. None as bad as this. That accent, him trying to act through that horrible prosthetics. What is going on? I'm literally watching John Travolta on the screen thinking, what is going on? The editing is laughably bad. Just terrible. The script, my god, the script. The things that these people say. And they turn Gotti into some sort of martyr. And the mob is like being persecuted by the police, like being set up. I can't. What was this film? What was the purpose of this movie even? Story of Gotti probably could be told in such a great way. That would be a real, like, biopic to watch. But don't even let anyone who has 6 degrees of separation connection to anyone that was working on this film close to the next Gotti. Because honestly, I don't even know what this was. John Travolta freaking like talking to the camera with his voiceover and that end line. Oh my god. So before I reveal my least favorite film of the year, let's go ahead and discuss a whole lot of dishonorable mentions. The Possession of Hannah Grace was garbage, cliched, mess, horrible graphics, pointless. There you go. The Darkest Minds was possibly the most boring, bland, lifeless of the young adult adaptations that we've seen to date, and that is quite the achievement. Robin Hood boasted a good enough performance from Taron Egerton and quite literally nothing else. The Happy Time Murders gave us a wonderfully wacky premise and then beat that one joke into the ground over and over and over again. Sherlock Gnomes continued to drag Sherlock Holmes through the mud, but this time in animation. A Wrinkle in Time and The Nutcracker in the Four Realms continued to show us that nobody does pretty yet hollow quite like Disney does. The only scary thing about Winchester was how boring it was. Mortal Engines ran out of gas before it even could leave the station. And finally, Nobody's Fool was quite the fool to literally everyone. With a horrible premise mixed in with Tyler Perry being so cringe with his like sex scenes and his like cool, edgy, R-rated cursing, but yet the weird, outdated, pretty misogynistic views on relationships. What? But none of these horrible films quite compared to my pick for the worst of the year. This movie was literally painful for me to sit through. Duck Duck Goose originally was supposed to have a theatric release and then just like disappeared the weekend it was supposed to come out and popped up on Netflix. But I wish we would have just like cracked this duck egg with a saucepan before it hatched up and wreaked havoc on Netflix, because it is absolutely terrible. A complete and total insult to children, to families, to geese, turtles, and ducks. This movie is an abomination. The humor in this movie is so god-awful. The messaging of this movie is absolutely terrible. The appeal to Chinese audiences is laughably offensive and stereotypical. Animation is mostly fine until we get a view of that like villain cat. All of our characters are wholly unlikable. The voice work is grating. The writing is literally painful. All set over a generic storyline that I couldn't care less about. I honestly think Netflix should be giving out awards to every single person who had the stamina and strength and lack of brains, apparently, to sit through the entirety of this film, because it was a real test of endurance. And yes, they turned the children's game Duck Duck Goose into a film about a goose, an annoying, horrible goose, like taking in 2 little ducks. And don't worry, animation fans, it was just revealed we're getting Norm of the North 2 in January. So those are my 10 worst movies of 2018. What did you think of my ranking? How did you feel about these movies that I listed here? And what were the worst films of the year for you? Let me know either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel so you are always up to date on our latest videos. I love you all so much for your continued support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!